Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a green-white Renown deck called Renowned Auras, since we do have a small Aura sub-theme which wasn't really there the last time that we covered the Renown deck. So let's dive right into it here, starting with our 1-drops where we have Kytheon, Hero of Akros, long time no see, but still a very good creature. For a single white we get a 2-1 that can also become indestructible with an activated ability, which helps him transform, because you need to attack with multiple creatures including Kytheon to make him transform into Gideon Battleforged, which can force creatures to attack him, can make creatures indestructible and untap them, or can become a creature himself to keep attacking. Then we've got the vanilla version of Kytheon, which is simply Elite Vanguard, single white, 2-1, so still a nice creature on turn 1. And then our final 1-drop is Sunbalde Elf, which is quite good in this deck, since we have a lot of forests and a lot of plains, so can play him on turn 1 and have the plains in play on turn 2 to make him a 2-2 creature. So quite nice in the early game, and then in the late game, for 4 and a white, we can give all creatures we control +1/+1 until end of turn, which is a nice ability in a creature deck. Then we get to our first Renown creature, so the Renown mechanic, if you don't know. Whenever a creature with the Renown ability deals combat damage to a player, they become renowned and get a number of +1/+1 counters. In the Topan Freeblade's case, she gets 1 +1/+1 counter. She also has Vigilance and is a 2/2 for 2 mana, so quite good on offense and defense. Then we've got Herald of the Pantheon, which is part of our small Aura sub-theme, since she makes our enchantments cost 1 colorless less, and then whenever we play an enchantment we also gain 1 life, which is nice against the other aggro decks. And then of course also just a 2/2 for 2 mana, so still decent stats. Then we have another 2-drop with Renown, this one's Undercity Troll. No Vigilance, but the Troll can regenerate for 2 and a green, so nice when you need to attack into larger creatures, or if the opponent wants to offer a trade, you can simply regenerate the Troll to keep him around. Then we get to some of our enchantments. We've got 1 copy of Grasp of the Hieromancer, gives the enchanted creature +1/+1, and whenever that creature attacks, we can tap down a defending creature the opponent controls, so this is a nice way to get rid of a blocker and get our creatures renowned. And then we've got 4 copies of Nimbus Wings, which is our preferred enchantment, gives our creatures +1/+2 and flying, so this is another nice way to get our creatures renowned. By simply giving them flying, most of the time they will be able to connect with the opponent. Then we've got 3 copies of Heliod's Pilgrim, which can search up an aura card and put it into our hand. So quite a versatile card, since we have enchantments that act as removal spells, or simply the enchantments we just covered in Nimbus Wings and Grasp of the Hieromancer. So a lot of versatile auras you can search up with the Heliod's Pilgrim, and also a creature that you can then target with said enchantments. So a nice card advantage card in a way in this deck, and just for 3 mana is not a bad deal. Then we've got 3 copies of Valeron Wardens, which is another Renown creature, this time a Renown 2, so if she connects she gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and whenever a creature we control becomes renowned we get to draw a card, so this is a very synergistic card in this deck, since you can play a 2-drop Renown creature and on the 3rd turn, in the first main phase, play the Wardens, attack with your Renown creature, get it renowned and draw a card right away, which is quite nice. And then finally our final Renown creature is Citadel Castellan. For 3 mana we get a 2/3 with Vigilance and Renown 2, so she becomes a 4/5 Vigilance if she does get to connect with an opponent, so quite a scary creature to deal with. Then we have some pump spells in Wildsize. Gives a creature +2/+2 and trample until end of turn, and we get to draw a card, so the trample and +2/+2 very nice with Renown creatures, since if an opponent blocks our 2/2 with an opposing 2/2, we can just give our 2/2 creature +2/+2 and trample, so we'll trample over the opponent's creature and still connect to deal combat damage to the opponent and become renowned. Then we have 2 copies of Suppression Bonds, which we can put on opposing enchantments, planeswalkers or creatures, as it says non-land permanent and not simply creature. So if the permanent is a creature, it can't attack or block, and otherwise it also can't activate its activated abilities, so planeswalkers can't use their abilities, or certain enchantments can't use their abilities either. And Suppression Bonds is an aura, so we can also search it up with our Heliod's Pilgrim. And then finally our big finisher is Knightly Valor, 5 mana to give a creature +2/+2 and Vigilance, and we also get a 2/2 Knight token with Vigilance just to give us another creature. And then our mana base, pretty simple, 10 plains, 10 forests, 2 copies of Canopy Vista, which also counts as a plains for the elf, which is important, and then 2 copies of Sunpetal Grove. So most of the time our lands will come into play untapped, which is nice in an aggro deck, and as you can see our curve is pretty low, so don't need a lot of lands to operate, so land destruction should not be a problem most of the time. This particular mana base that comes into play untapped most of the time does have the downside of not really being able to cast double white or double green cards consistently, so that's why we're not playing cards like Consul's Lieutenant or perhaps even Knight of the White Orchid, which would otherwise be pretty good, but we can't really afford to play too many tap lands because that kind of makes our 1-drops a lot worse. So by not playing those tap lands we can't really afford to play double white or double green cards, so we can't play some powerful cards like Consul's Lieutenant. Instead we're opting for a smoother mana base, and hopefully the card quality is still high enough to win us some games. Alright, that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which is pretty nice here. Lots of 1-drops and an Undercity Troll. So this hand could use some enchantments to make sure that an opposing blocker isn't a problem, but otherwise a pretty nice hand. So let's see here. I think I want to play one of our white cards here, so next turn we can play 2 1-drops. So I think we lead with the Vanguard, so if our opponent has removal for it, then we still have our Kytheon. And it's not like Kytheon is gonna transform next turn. So then next turn we get to go Sunbalde Elf plus Kytheon. Well, Perilous Mirror is annoying, but at least we just trade here. So I'm not gonna play any creatures in our first main phase. So I'll just attack with the Elite Vanguard and hope our opponent just trades here. So let's see if they block. They don't. Alright, so now we get to play... Still think we go for Kytheon plus Sunblade Elf. So now our opponent could get 2 creatures with the Perilous Mirror, but we could just make the Kytheon indestructible next turn. And we could also just transform him next turn if our opponent doesn't kill any creatures. So let's see, 3 mana up. Alright, Nimbus Wings is a nice one. But with 3 mana up, our opponent could have all sorts of cards, removal spells, counter spells. So probably want to start by playing a land so we have the activation available here. So we could just attack with Kytheon, make him indestructible, but then our opponent likely blocks and then kills the Sunblade Elf, so I think we just attack with everyone here. And our opponent will be able to kill some of our creatures, but we will have a transformed Gideon at least. So if our opponent wants to block Kytheon, we can make it indestructible. So hope they don't have a removal in response here. They don't. So we hit for 4 and Sunblade Elf dies. But now we have a transformed Gideon. So I am going to untap a creature and make it indestructible. And pass a turn. Alright, opponent has a Whirler Rogue, which is pretty good on this board, as it makes multiple blockers, can start attacking our Gideon, and will make it difficult to get our creatures renowned. Alright, let's see here. So we could play 2 2-drops, we could also play the Nimbus Wings on the Vanguard, so their opponent can't just trade a Thopter token with it, which I think is worth it here. So I'll start by playing out a Nimbus Wings on the Vanguard, and I think, let's see, we could turn Gideon into a creature to hit for 4, but then we might lose him next turn. Could also just untap the Vanguard, make it indestructible, which is not bad. I think I like hitting for 3 here, and then untapping the Vanguard and make it indestructible. Opponent takes 3, and here it's between the Freeblade and the Troll, of course. The Troll can regenerate, Freeblade can play offense and defense nicely. Think we're gonna need the Troll more here, just because our opponent already has a bunch of creatures in play, so it's gonna be difficult to get the Freeblade renowned. So let's play the Troll, and then make this one indestructible, and pass. So now we can block Thopter tokens. Opponent can't easily remove the Vanguard. And we have another creature in play, in case our opponent has a flashback. Instead it's gonna be Open Ixalis, which can destroy our Troll. So won't be able to regenerate it now. And let's see if our opponent attacks or stays on defense. Our opponent stays on defense. Alright, so could turn Gideon into a creature now, but I think just making our creatures indestructible is pretty valuable. Although, let's see. Our Gideon is on 5 loyalty, so it's not gonna die easily unless our opponent has burn spells. And Open Ixalis can't destroy a creature next turn. So I kind of like turning Gideon into a creature now. Could also force the Whirler Rogue to attack it, play something like Castellan and try to eat the Rogue, but that's gonna be pretty bad if our opponent has removal for the Castellan. So I think we turn a Gideon into a creature, and then we could attack both at Open Ixalis, but then our opponent might just let the Open Ixalis die. So I think I'm gonna go 1 at the Open Ixalis and then 1 at our opponent. Opponent does jump with a Thopter and also jumps with the Rogue. And now I'm gonna play the Castellan and hope our opponent doesn't have a sweeper. And pass. Opponent draws a card with Open Ixalis and loses 1. And we do see an attack with a Thopter. So our opponent might have a sweeper here. They do. Radiant Flames for 3. So we lose both creatures. And a Perilous Mirror, so that can block our Gideon, so it can't kill the Open Ixalis. And our opponent gets back Whirler Rogue on top. So pretty annoying. Grasp of the Hieromancer, interesting. So we could enchant the Gideon, get rid of the blocker for a turn, kill Open Ixalis. But then this will fall off at the end of turn. Still feel like that might be worth it, because getting rid of the Open Ixalis seems pretty important. So let's go for it. Tap down the mirror, kill Open Ixalis, play out a Freeblade, Opponent is gonna replay the Whirler Rogue, so could attack Gideon with the Perilous Mirror by making it unblockable. But then we might be able to trade Freeblade with the Whirler Rogue next turn. Our opponent's not making it unblockable, so we could trade here. Then our opponent most likely redirects the 2 damage to the Freeblade. But it's not like the Freeblade is gonna get in there anytime soon. So I think trading is fine. Opponent does indeed kill the Freeblade. And okay. Troll can't play both here. And also can't regenerate a troll if we play him. Again, a lot of interesting decisions we can make here with Gideon. Opponent has 1 card left, so I don't hate playing the Wardens, forcing the Whirler Rogue to attack Gideon, so we get rid of a blocker, and then next turn try and attack with the Wardens, because the Wardens can also just block the Whirler Rogue. So let's see if this resolves first. It does. Alright. Pass the turn. And see if our opponent has removal for the Wardens or not. Or if they have a big finisher. Alright, they're gonna make the Rogue unblockable, so we get rid of even more blockers this way. So they might have a way to block our Wardens in hand. So Gideon down to 4. And a passing of the turn, alright, don't hate that. So I think we just attack with the Wardens. And see if we draw something relevant. And then we can play the Troll, keep up regeneration mana if we don't draw anything. Alright, sweet. Suppression Bonds, not really something that's great on this board, but could be later. So I think we play out our Troll first here, to see if this resolves. And then force the Rogue to attack again. And then we can try and eat it with the Troll by regenerating it. So maybe our opponent is forced to make the Rogue unblockable again, which then makes it easier for the Troll to become renowned. So we see an attack. I think I'll go ahead and block. And then regenerate it. Opponent doesn't have removal. So we eat the Rogue successfully. And still a land from the opponent, so they might be flooding out a little bit. Yeah. We could turn Gideon into a creature now, which I don't hate. Apply some more pressure, attack with everyone. And see if we get to draw another card from the Troll here. Or if our opponent is gonna double block it. Nope, just 2 chumps. Alright, even got an achievement there. And let's see, we could play the Troll. Let's see, how bad is it if our opponent has a Languish? It's not really that bad because this survives and then we hit for 7 next turn and our opponent is still dead. So I think playing the Troll here is fine. So we can regenerate either one of them. Pause the turn. And see if our opponent has something here. 8 mana, so if they have land, Ulamog, they still can't cast it. They do have a Languish, so regenerating won't really do anything against minus effects, since I can show you, just to prove it, that our creature is still gonna die here, even though it had the regeneration shield. And now we can turn Gideon into a creature. I guess we can Knightly Valor as well. But if our opponent then bounces or kills one creature, that's bad. So I think we just attack with both. See what happens. Alright, sweet, we got there. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks acceptable. We've got a turn 1 elf, turn 2 Freeblade with planes for the elf. And then a pump spell to get the Freeblade through, so looks like a fine hand. And we're on the play as well, which is nice. So let's see what our opponent is up to. We see Evolving Wilds. It's gonna get a forest, alright. Let's go ahead and play the Freeblade, attack for 2 and pause the turn. And then best case scenario, our opponent plays a random 2/2 for 2 mana. We get to Wildsize next turn, get the Freeblade Renowned. That would be ideal. So let's see if our opponent has a 2-drop here. Alright, green-black, so could kill one of our creatures if they have a Reef Soul. Instead it's gonna be a Dwinnen's Elite, so this makes me think our opponent is on a green-black elf deck. And playing the Elite without an elf in play, so just a 2/2, which is exactly what we wanted to happen here. So we get to attack with both and hope our opponent blocks. So we get to Wildsize one of our creatures. And there we go, perfect. Just as we wrote it up. Freeblade becomes Renowned, we draw a card from the Wildsize, our opponent loses their creature and get in for a bunch of damage. So our opponent's at 14 with no elves in play, which is important, so if they have another elite they won't get any tokens. Instead they just play a shaman with only the 1 elf in play, so not super impressive. So we have a few options here. We can play out the Grasp of the Hieromancer on one of our creatures to tap down the shaman and get in for 6. Or we could Suppression Bonds the shaman, which is a little bit safer to play around a possible removal spell from the opponent. But at this point I don't think our opponent has removal, otherwise they might want to kill one of the creatures instead. Could also just play the Heliod's Pilgrim and trade off one of the creatures, but I think we want to keep applying the pressure and not let our opponent block with the shaman here. So let's see. Yeah, I don't hate going for the Grasp and then put it on the elf. We can actually activate the elf next turn, but I still feel like our Freeblade is slightly more valuable. So get in for 6 and pause the turn. And if our opponent plays another elf, we still have Suppression Bonds. Get in for 6 again, our opponent is at 2. So we have a few options here. Also, if we pump our Sunbalde Elf and the Freeblade with the ability here, we'll have 2 4/4s. So that matches up nicely against a 3/2. Alright, our opponent plays Dwinnen, gives other elves +1/+1, and can gain some life if Dwinnen attacks. So not a great target for Suppression Bonds, since the effect here will still keep happening. And we drew Knightly Valor, which is nice. So let's see, if we play a land, activate, have 2 4/4, step down 1, then our opponent is forced to chump with the Dwinnen, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let's see, we could also go for the Knightly Valor, put it on one of our creatures, give it +2/+2, which essentially does the same, but then our opponent can actually trade with one of our creatures, which I don't want to have happen, because let's say we put the Knightly Valor on our Sunbalde Elf, we tap down Dwinnen, attack with both, so our opponent is forced to trade, but then they can actually trade the Shaman for the Topan Freeblade, while activating forces an actual chump block. So let's attack with both, tap down a Shaman because I want our opponent to chump with the Dwinnen. So our opponent has to block, otherwise they're dead. Opponent does not block, so they're dead. Had they blocked, they would have lost the Dwinnen and been in a pretty bad spot anyways, but clearly our opponent should have blocked there. But yeah, sweet. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look here at a mulligan, unfortunately. This hand is pretty bad also, so let's try to go down. Well, I guess we'll keep and hope to hit a 2-drop creature next turn. Otherwise we're looking at a turn 3 Castellan, which is pretty slow. Although we do have a way to make it have flying. Alright, not the worst draw. So now we have a 2/2 in play, and next turn we have a Castellan to add some pressure, and hopefully we can get it renowned. So green-white, what's the third color? Swamp, alright. So still unsure what the opponent's exactly playing, but I'm just gonna slam down this Castellan after we attack. Opponent could have removal for it, but so be it. Next turn we can go Freeblade plus Nimbus Wings. And hopefully our opponent does not have a removal. It's gonna be a tapped Prairie Stream, so pretty slow start from the opponent. So let's see. There's not a lot of instants we need to worry about here. So I think playing Freeblade and then enchanting the Sunbalde Elf is still fine. Gets the Sunbalde Elf out of a Rising Miasma range. Our Castellan is probably gonna be out of Languish range here too. And we can't really play around a Planar Outburst, since that just destroys all creatures. So the best way to play around it is by trying to kill our opponent before they can play it. So next turn we can activate the Sunbalde Elf's ability here. And let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That would put our opponent at 1. So we have a troll. Yeah, I still like just activating the elf here. Opponent has Telling Time in response. I guess we could play the troll, since we can also regenerate it. Which might be better if our opponent has the outbursts, so let's see. We would hit for 6 plus 3, 9. Put the opponent at 4. Yeah, still like using the elf here, because that means, alright, our opponent has a fog. Did not expect a fog. So no damage this turn. So hopefully no Planar Outburst next turn, because that would be unfortunate. 5th land, and instead it's just a Woodland Wanderer, which is gonna be pretty big here, 6/6. Alright, so we can still attack with the elf. Could also attack with everyone, but then we're throwing away the Castellan. So we could attack with the elf, and I think we then play the troll, since at this point we can't really beat a sweeper. And then next turn we can try to attack with everyone and use the elf's ability. So let's attack for 3. If we had some way to get rid of the blocker for a turn, that would have been nice. So let's play the troll, make sure to keep a green mana untapped. And pass the turn. And hope our opponent doesn't have a sweeper here. Instead it's Kiora. Alright, so that's not too bad. And their opponent is going to untap a land. So maybe he wants to try and work up to the ultimate. So we could attack with everyone. And let's say our opponent blocks here. We use the elf's ability for plus another 6. That's lethal unless our opponent has interaction. And if they have a fog, that's also not the end of the world, because we don't lose a creature to the Wanderer. So I don't hate going for it here. Our other option is playing the Wardens, and we also have Undercity Troll regeneration available. But I think this game is not going to be about card advantage, so let's just hit our opponent with everyone. And let's see if our opponent has a fog. So they block there. Let's use the ability. Opponent has a telling time. Do they also have a fog? Or do they die? Alright, they're dead. Sweet. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look here at a decent opening hand. Don't have any 2-drops, which is unfortunate, but do have Castellan plus Wardens, which is nice. Opponent leads with a Lava Step Raider, so looks to be a mono red deck. So we just have to try and survive the early game here. And Castellan is a pretty good blocker, especially once she's renowned. So hopefully we can get to that point. Instead we see a Goblin Warpaint on the Raider. So it's gonna hit us for 3 damage. So 2-drop would be nice, and we do draw one, nice. So now we get to attack for 2 with the elf, play the Freeblade, and turn this into a good old-fashioned race, since I think we can outrace this Lava Step Raider at the moment. I guess there's an argument for playing defense, since we have a pretty decent late game here, but our creatures are better at attacking than they are at blocking, especially since our opponent can use removal spells to get rid of our blockers, so double blocking becomes pretty scary. Opponent does have a Twin Bolt for the Freeblade, so gets rid of a blocker here. And we draw into Nimbus Wings, so I think I like playing the Castellan here, since next turn we might be able to attack with it. And before that we can play the Wardens, so we draw a card when she becomes renowned. And also Vigilance means can play offense and defense nicely. Opponent already used a removal spell, and if they want to kill this, they would have to play multiple burn spells, or I guess Firecraft would do it here. So the opponent gets in for 3 more damage, and they could bump the Raider to give it +2/+0, but that would be fine. So we're at 11, and their opponent plays a Pia and Kieran, alright. So that can definitely block our Castellan. but we could just use the Nimbus Wings here to give this flying so it can still attack. It'll have vigilance, so that's nice. Because if we attack with both, our opponent just double blocks the Castellan. We don't have a pump spell to punish our opponent. So yeah, I think playing Nimbus Wings here is fine. And attack for 3. If our opponent blocks with Thopter, that's fine. If they don't, this becomes Renowned. So they do decide to chump. Let's pass. Probably still not blocking the Raider here, since I don't want to lose the Castellan to any shenanigans. But let's see what our opponent has here. And next turn we also have Knightly Valor on the Castellan. Inferno Fist. Opponent going all in here. So can we afford to get hit for 5 and go down to 6? It is pretty scary, since if our opponent has Firecraft, they can also sacrifice the Fist and we take another 6. And we're dead. But no attacks would be great for us. If I could choose to not have my opponent attack, I would definitely choose that. Alright, great. Opponent just plays Peril Smear. So now, let's see, I think we do want to play the Knightly Valor here. Since we'll get another creature out of it, get a giant Castellan. And I guess hope our opponent doesn't have Act of Treason to steal the Castellan for a turn. So a hit for 5. Opponent does chump. Pass the turn. Opponent can sacrifice the Peril Smear to Pian Kiran. But now we have an enormous Citadel Castellan. So I don't think our opponent will be able to kill it very easily, at least. Another Inferno Fist. Alright. So what happens if our opponent attacks now? If we double block, our opponent could kill one of our 2 blockers with 1 Inferno Fist. So we wouldn't actually be able to trade with the Lava Step Raider. Also don't really want to trade with the Castellan here. So I think I might just chump with one of our 2 creatures here. But still our opponent's not attacking, I don't really understand that. I might be missing something. But at this point we can play the Wardens. Attack with the Castellan, get it Renowned. And draw a card from the Wardens. And play out the Troll. So I guess if our opponent has Act of Treason, we take 7, plus our opponent has another 4 in Inferno Fists, plus another 2 from the Peril Smear, plus another 2 from the Pian Kiran. So we are dead to an Act of Treason effect. Instead it's just gonna be an Avaricious Dragon, which is gonna be forced to chump the Castellan soon. Opponent's last card was another Lava Step Raider. So let's see, if we attack, yeah, I can't really attack with anyone except for the Castellan. But I think our opponent is gonna have to think about blocking this one. And we could use the Elf's ability to deal 1 more damage, but I think I want to have the ability on defense rather than on offense. So I guess if our opponent draws into an Act of Treason effect, we're dead. But if they don't, we likely win next turn. Or at least be in a position to win next turn. Opponent drew 2 cards, was one of them Act of Treason. One of them is a land, everyone attacks. Alright. So can have the ability here from the elf. So I don't think we have to worry about trample in any way. So this one probably wants to block here. And then I think we want to just eat the other creatures. So let's put the troll here, Mir here, and then try and trade here and not put the elf in combat. Does this seem good? Yeah, I don't hit it. So let's block and then use the ability and see what happens. Opponent could have responded by sacrificing the Perilous Mirror and killing the elf. So they're Inferno Fisting our face. And I think they've given up, since they could have sacrificed a mirror to Pian Kiran, sacrificed the other Inferno Fist. So I think we got there. Alright, sweet. So managed to dodge an Act of Treason effect, which I think was the only way our opponent could realistically win there. So sweet, I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.